afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you so much for downloading the Faith Life podcast of Discovery Fellowship Church. I'm your host, Pastor Nathan, here as always with my co-host, Pastor Matt.
Hey, guys.
Pastor Matt, you are preaching this month.
Wait, what?
Right?
I'm just kidding.
Right? Oh,
yeah.
That would be funny. Wait, what? Oh, I guess I should get on that. Matt, okay, you don't have to answer this, but maybe. What is the latest you've ever started prepping a sermon?
Started? A sermon, like a Sunday morning sermon.
Like on Sunday morning, you've got to preach.
Yeah.
And I guess, okay, let's distinguish between started and like actually like sat down and started. Do you know what I mean? Like for instance, I could be like, oh, I'm going to preach on this passage and I've been thinking through it and doing a little bit of praying, but then it's like, all right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to get an outline together or however you organize it and like really hit the road.
Well, I think, was it last time or the time before that I had started, I was going, and then I threw it all away, was it Thursday? And started over completely because I didn't like anything. Didn't like where it was going, didn't think that was what God wanted me to preach, so I tossed it and...
So a Thursday, you've started fresh.
Yeah. Reboot.
I think Thursday is probably the absolute latest where I've been like, I know what I'm going to preach on, but I'm going to get an outline. Like, I'm going to seriously start working, and that was stressful.
Yeah.
It was like 3 days of solid nothing. And,
right.
But sitting at my computer working on stuff. And
yeah. My hope is tomorrow I start. So we're recording this on Thursday. I'm preaching on Sunday. I'm like 95% done with the sermon for Sunday. I still have to do, graphics and slides and all that action, but the content is all there. It's all ready to go.
Start with graphics?
No, Nathan, content.
The most important part though is how it looks.
We talked about this yesterday.
We did talk about
during our little staff meeting. It was fashion before function every time.
Now, see, for me, as the person who's going to make the bulletin and get stuff on the website, stuff like that, I say, give me the graphics first.
Right. I'm sure you would.
And then
but here's the thing.
Rest.
Once we have the graphic done now, we're done for the month.
That's true. Once you have the main one, you could tweak it week to week. But
we use the main title one and I just alter the subtitle.
I know this would be interesting. Would you ever want to be at a place where it's like the year got mapped out in terms of sermon series and you got your graphics figured out like before the year started?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be sweet.
I would like that. So,
and you can still modify and update as you're going because things change.
Adjust, but
what was relevant now might not be as cool next year.
Right. If you put in something about like the Olympics.
Of course, if we really want to do like a deep dive into proper church graphics, we need to think of what's cool right now and wait 10 years to use it.
Ouch.
Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? My bad.
See, they shouldn't be. We should be cutting edge.
Right. On the forefront of
culture and creativity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sunday morning, if a pastor called out sick. There's another question. Our producer in the room asked this, and that's a good question. Matt, has there ever been a time when you had not planned on having to preach, but what's the most last minute you've been like, hey, I need you to preach?
I was warned of the possibility on a Friday for Sunday morning from Rick.
Okay.
He got super sick. I was like, hey, I'm planning on being there. And I was like, are you sure you want to plan on being there? I can go ahead. I can put something together. Like at a minimum, I can stand up there and read God's word. Right. And we can talk about it a little bit, right? But he ended up preaching anyway, so it was fine. But I have a couple of sermons that if it were like last minute, all has failed, I could stand up there and preach something. A couple like back pocket sermons, as we like to call them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun. Well, if you haven't known so already, I had like my brain had to switch gears. It had to like loading the next segment. I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not like a robot where I have to like compute, but I did have to kind of think about what am I going to say next?
Yeah. Where are we right now?
The other thing is I had an email text thing going on with somebody else where it's like semi-critical. And so I saw a text from this person come in and I got distracted because I looked at it. I'm sorry. But you don't need to be what?
Be with the ones you're with.
Yeah, exactly.
I just pulled out my phone while saying that so that I could just pretend to stare at it.
Yeah, for you audio listeners, Matt is looking at his phone as he says that. But listeners, viewers, you don't need to be distracted by emergencies. So if you haven't done so already, take a minute. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you downloaded this. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you comment below. And don't forget, you can be a part of the podcast by emailing us at podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com.
That was good.
dfchurch.com. Yeah. Now, where's that kind of accent? Like advertising type thing?
Yeah, old radio.
Do you know when radio was first invented, most people thought it was going to be a big failure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Famous quote was like, there's no future in radio. How will you ever make money on sending out a signal to nobody specifically? Just like putting out a broad signal that nobody's asking for. How's that ever going to be something?
Isn't that what we do to like aliens? We're just sending out a signal, hoping that some sort of intelligent species in the beyond responds.
Yes.
Same thing. Radio is alien communication.
It was at first. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into the news. I want to start with something that's a little bit close to home, and then we're going to go a little bit broader. So if you're not from here, this won't necessarily impact you as much, but it's good to know our state is burning.
It's on fire.
It's literally on fire right now, and it's not far from us.
Right. So we have 3 fires currently going that I know of in Colorado.
And California has a really big fire right now too, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Forest fires are everywhere. So even if you're not here, you might be affected by one of these fires.
Yeah. So we have one in Loveland. The hills just west of the city. Loveland is the next city south of where we are. So we're super close.
Yep.
In fact, here at our church, we're like a mile and a half from the border of Loveland.
Okay.
Maybe a little less actually, but so it's super close. It is now, as of Thursday morning, around 8,000 acres, and we got 1% contained.
They got it up to 1.
They got it up to 1 overnight. They were able to contain, I guess, around Sylvandale Guest Ranch.
So what do they go out? How do they? What
does containment?
What does containment mean?
Yeah.
Are they going out and like digging? Like, here's the direction it's spreading, so we're gonna go out even further and like
dig it. I know that's part of the process that they do. But I don't know how they calculate what containment actually means. Because sometimes they'll purposefully not contain it, let it burn.
Right.
Depending on where it is, right? To clear out old debris, because
dead wood and stuff like that.
Whether you like it or not, wildfires are actually good for nature in the long run. Yes. Obviously, they're harmful to us and our buildings and our livestock.
And this is the big thing about natural disasters in general. Really, the problems for a lot of the time, it's just because we happen to live there, right?
Right.
Like if there's like a tornado going through, sure, it's going to mess up trees and stuff, but that's fine. Maybe fling a few squirrels into the air. But
could be fun to watch depending on the squirrel.
Exactly. But it's really only a problem because it hits our house.
Right. Yeah, natural disasters only bother us when they directly affect us.
When they bother us.
Yeah, exactly. So right now our skies are just covered in smoke and ash. My car this morning had a layer of ash around it, on it. When I opened the door, it like all fluttered away.
So what are the risks of it getting into town?
I don't think it'll ever get here. It has to make such huge jumps.
Has that ever happened?
Like a wildfire in Fort Collins?
A wildfire spreading into the city.
Into cities, yes. Into this city, I don't think so. I think
the closest it got, my parents' old house, one time was right up at the foothills, and some of the fields and things were torched around them.
Yeah. So right now, my house, as the bird flies, we're like 6 miles from voluntary evacuation, and like 10 miles from flammage.
Have you ever had to evacuate due to a wildfire?
No.
Me neither.
Yeah, no.
That'd be kind of scary, huh?
Yeah.
Well, so that's kind of what's going on. And same thing in California, right? I mean, it's just, that has burned a lot more. It's a lot bigger, right? I believe so.
I haven't looked.
Why are there now? All right. And this will come into a later topic. So I'm going to put a pin in it right here, though. Okay. A lot of people will say these fires are worse because of global climate change, which would be increased temperatures. And there'd be here's the argument. Increased temperatures, so things are drying out more, so you've got a lot more dry wood than you would normal, as well as something about increased temperatures leading to certain bugs and insect populations not dying because they're supposed to, die out in the winter.
Right.
And when the winter's warmer, they don't die out, which leads to greater bugs eating the trees and killing them, leading to more dead wood, leading to more forest fires, et cetera, et cetera. Some people would say that it's just mismanagement of your forest lands and that there's a way to prevent that otherwise. So the bigger thing is climate change real, Matt, and going to end the world?
It's possible. Well, I don't think climate change is necessarily what ends the world. God's got a plan. Is he going to use climate change as part of it? Possibly.
Sweet.
Just saw this. California wildfire activity, speaking of climate change.
Okay, there we go.
Is 2,816% higher this year.
That's really high.
And has already spawned one of the largest wildfires in state history. So there's a bunch of fires happening.
Well, and the other part that's really tough about, it's like, why are these so hard to manage? It's because when you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's really hard to get equipment in, to get water in, to get into those areas. It's a lot more difficult than like if there's a fire down your street, like there's hydrants and streets and there's the ability to get in and put it out a lot easier. Over 751,000
acres as of July 30th in California have already been burned this year. Like this wildfire season, which is 29 times higher than last year.
Wow.
That's a lot of
It's a lot
That's
of fire.
a lot. Yeah.
Through the fire and the flames we carry on. It's a song by a band called Dragon Force. It's exciting.
That's your second time you used the word dragon today.
That is the second time today I've used the word dragon. When I walked in this morning and I saw Matt, I said, "What's up, Snapdragon?"
Yep.
I don't know why. But
you just got dragons on the brain.
I got dragon brain. So email us, podcast@dfchurch.com. Tell us what type of dragon is your favorite dragon. I've mentioned dragons yesterday too when we were doing our year planning for the church.
Yeah.
I proposed on the calendar we do an all church D&D day.
You did.
Nobody else appreciated that idea, but I think it'd be fun. The other thing in the news I wanted to talk about, maybe a little bit more relevant to as Christians, what should our response be? I would say it would be the Olympics.
Okay.
Now, if you're not aware, the Olympics started. I almost wasn't. I think we talked maybe a little bit about it last week, but it's never been something I've watched anyway. So I only saw a lot of this after the fact. The opening ceremony, which is always supposed to be a highlighting of the host country's culture, had a scene that was intended to depict welcoming and diversity, but was very controversial because it appeared to be a parody almost of the Last Supper painting, which every Christian in the world took as, well, if you're making fun of the Last Supper with drag queens and children, which is a weird combo anyway, you must be intentionally trying to make a statement against Christianity.
Okay.
Did you see this tableau?
Yes,
okay.
I did.
Now, did you see the other part real quick before we talk about the one that was really controversial with the blue guy and the Last Supper and the drag queens? Did you see the part where they had Marie Antoinette holding her head and then the fire come up and and a metal band Gojira started playing?
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. I was all for that part. That was fun.
A little creepy.
Yes, but it fulfills what it's supposed to do. The host country, Marie Antoinette, right? That's who that was?
Yeah. I think that's who it was. No.
Anne Boleyn, Marie Antoinette, whoever is supposed to be, beheaded French noble. They beheaded a lot of people. Did you know the last time, while you're looking this up, I'm going to give you another bit of interesting trivia.
The last time we had a headless person at the Olympics, it was Marie Antoinette. That's right.
Marie Antoinette. The last time the guillotine was used was in France, was after the release of Star Wars. It doesn't seem like they would have kept using it, but they did. Anyway, so yeah, that part I thought was fine. It encapsulated French culture.
Okay.
It's a French metal band with a Japanese name, which is fun. And Marie Antoinette, cool. But then we get to this Last Supper. But okay, start there. What did you think of it when you saw it? Were you horribly offended? Did you immediately cancel the internet so that you wouldn't have to see it in your house again?
No, because the internet is a vile place of debauchery and filth at all times.
So are the Olympics.
Oh, all right, there we go. So here's the thing. We like the Olympics in my house. We watch them winter, summer, love them. Typically love watching the opening ceremonies. My first reaction, other than was why?
Right.
Like, what does this have to? I get it. We're bringing in the culture of the host country, but what are the Olympics actually about?
The games.
Right.
Well, I mean,
they're
really,
literally called the Olympiad or the Olympic Games, right?
Right.
Like,
So all right. So here's a question. We're going back to Greek.
let's go back to Greek.
Greek events, right? Was what these are named after. Olympus, the Mount of the Gods. I'm assuming, and I don't know the history of the Olympics. Maybe I should. Before this modern Olympic Games thing started, which was what, late 1800s, early 1900s, around there? Was there an actual ancient Greek Olympics celebration that we modeled this after? But it was probably more like people getting eaten by bears and stuff.
That actually sounds really fun.
Yeah. They
Some
probably
bear wrestling.
had gladiatorial games.
Right. That's what,
That are the basis for our Olympics. We just don't have people fight to the death and try to reenact a battle and fight a rhino.
So
that kind of stuff.
The first written evidence of Olympic Games goes back to 776 BC, when the Greeks began measuring time in Olympiads, or time between each edition of the games.
There you go.
They were held every 4 years in honor of Zeus, the Greek king of the gods. Let's see if there's any other information pertinent to us right now. The International Olympic Committee was founded in 1894. Who governs our current movement, right?
Okay, late 1800s.
Yeah.
So the Olympics are initially what those original Olympic Games were most likely celebrations to pagan gods anyway, right? A lot of feasting, partying,
ready for this,
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The Roman emperor's growing influence eventually led to the end of the ancient Olympic Games when Emperor Theodosius I banned them in 393 to promote Christianity.
Wow. So really, Christians did the first attack, right? We started the fight by getting rid of the Olympics. So they're coming back to attack us in return.
It took 1,500 years for the Olympics to return.
Well, and it wasn't done by the Romans because the Roman Empire died.
Yeah, it was the modern Olympics.
So somebody probably was just some guy in the 1800s was reading an ancient Greek book and was like, "Hey, they used to do these Olympics. Let's do it again."
Baron Pierre de Coubertin presented the idea in 1894. He was a Frenchman.
Was it in France originally?
The first one was in Athens, Greece.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So there you go. There's a little bit of history.
There's your history of the Olympics. Now, with all that to be said, back to this.
Games, sports, athletes is what we think of when we think of the Olympics, right?
Feasting and celebrations?
Games. No. We think of
I do.
The athletic competitions. That's what it's about. Winning gold, silver, or bronze.
When I think about athletic competitions, I think about eating.
Nathan's hot dog contest.
I think Super Bowl, I don't think of who's going to win the game. I think of what kind of snacks am I going to eat.
Why am I even on this podcast with this guy? What in the world?
I'm not a sportsy guy, though. All right. So games are what it was about.
Yeah. So my first question, with a lot of our modern, I'm just going to do something bigger, greater, more outlandish, and more expensive than the previous country did as far as the opening ceremonies go, is why. This is supposed to highlight the greatest athletes in the world across a whole bunch of different styles of athleticism, whether that's prancing around on a horse, which that's the weirdest one we have right now. Have you watched any of it? They're literally like...
Did you watch? Okay, that was my favorite thing I've seen in the Olympics because I watched it with Snoop Dogg commenting on it, and I was like, this is worth watching. This is so fun.
Okay, why? That brings up another thing. What has our world come to that Snoop Dogg is the most wholesome part of the Olympics?
Dude, Snoop Dogg is a weirdly wholesome guy at this point. I guess he smokes a lot of marijuana, but
yeah,
he is just. It was so funny. Now I don't know if this was from this Olympics or a previous one. It was him and Kevin Hart.
Mm-hmm.
So was that? Do you know if that was this one?
No,
they were commenting on the horse doing this little dance.
This year it's Kevin Hart and Keenan,
like from Keenan and Kel.
Yeah, SNL dude, right?
Well, yeah, but before that, he was
Before that,
Nickelodeon.
yeah. So
yeah, okay.
Those two do some commentating on their own.
I saw a video about it was Kevin Hart and Snoop Dogg commenting on the
prancing horses.
Prancing.
Yeah.
And he's like, I gotta get that horse in my next music video. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of broad athletic opportunities that we have, but it's primarily the Olympics are about the athletes and showcasing the greatest in the world.
Right. And that's ultimately what it should be about.
Right. And so when I watch the opening ceremonies, and it has absolutely nothing to do with sport, game, athlete competition, unless I guess a drag show, fashion runway show is a competition, just not an Olympic game one. So let's keep that for New York Fashion Week or whatever it is. It was very confusing. And
have you? So you say you watch these often? Are they often in their opening ceremonies related to gaming, like the actual games?
Not the last many.
Or do they tend to
They tend to just showcase culture.
Okay. If that's what it's become, okay. So let's say that's what it's about now. It's about showcasing your country before we start showing all the athletes. Mm-hmm. I did see one guy who was doing like not hobby horse. What do you call that thing?
Prancing horse?
No, it's the guy. It's the gymnastics one where he's like
pommel horse.
Pommel horse. Yeah. I saw this one kid do it who was kind of nerdy, but he was really good. That was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so
was he just kind of nerdy because he wears glasses?
Well, you had to take them off to do that.
That makes him nerdy because he wears glasses. Yeah. That's weird.
he's like Superman. He took him off and did his cool moves.
That's true. And then he puts him back on. He's Clark Kent again.
Yeah. Huh. Now, all right, so let's say the modern Olympics purpose is going to be we're showcasing all this stuff.
Is that its purpose though?
Regardless, that's what it's become.
All right.
If you're saying this is not abnormal for their opening ceremonies, how did you feel about this one? Did it feel offensive and an intentional front against Christianity to you?
It felt offensive just for what it was in general, not because of an affront to Christianity. Okay. It felt offensive that all we're doing is showcasing debauchery.
Right.
And it wasn't just the drag queens all around that runway.
Right.
That there was a lot more to it that was showcasing debauchery. There was the three people who went into the room together and pushed the cameraman out and shut the door, implying something else that was going to happen in that room. There was just a whole lot of
the blue guy wearing not much clothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so
it honestly, like, to me, it didn't accomplish, well, maybe it did accomplish the purpose of it has the entire world talking about French culture right now. Yeah. It did showcase the French culture. From what I hear and have seen and read.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, that's us.
So what I found interesting about this was just honestly, both sides of this discussion. I thought it was just, here's what struck me so interesting, I guess. First of all, you have the Christians who are just like up in arms. Like there were people canceling sponsorships and like, the whole place is denouncing this attack on Christianity, which I don't know. The Last Supper to me isn't Christianity, right? It's a painting from Leonardo da Vinci. Right. At our yearly Seder, the Rabbi Jack comes in and talks about
how wrong that picture is from what it is in Scripture.
Things anyway. So my hope is not in the Last Supper. And as a lot of people have pointed out, that has been parodied often.
Right.
The Simpsons has a parody thing of that. The Expendables, an action movie, one of their covers used that picture, and nobody got up in arms. So why does this one? My question, first of all, is why is this one hitting so offensively? Is it just because it's drag queens? Which, okay, to me, what it feels like is we are reading into the motivation of the person, right? Even if they were, hey, we're going to take the Last Supper as an inspiration, and then we're going to also talk about some of the response and some of the, is it even really supposed to be the Last Supper? We can get to that. But let's say the creator said, I'm going to do this thing where I'm going to use the Last Supper as the source, but I'm going to make it drag queens and kids. Is there intent to say because Christianity is dumb? Or is there intent to say because I like drag queens and kids, and so I'm going to put them into this kind of known setting, put in a different way. Because how often is that an artistic thing where you take something known, you put a twist on it to make it almost shocking, and that's kind of your statement, right?
Right.
So to get super offended or to view this as an all-out insult attack on Christianity requires me to, I think, read more into this person's intent than maybe we can know what it was, right? Unless they came out like him, the guy saying, yeah, I did this because I hate Christians.
Right. And
then maybe you can get upset.
Yeah. The creative director behind the show has been interviewed and talked about it and has tried to soften it a little bit.
Yeah.
But the weird part is what I've heard and seen, and again, we can't believe everything we see and hear on the internet.
I will tell you, I've been trying to dig to what is the actual reality of this, and there's a lot of layers.
Right.
So go.
Apparently, on the program that was handed to media people at the time, so they know what's coming when, so where to film, how to film, all that stuff, this part of the ceremony was called in French the Last Supper.
Yes. Now, I've seen that as well.
Which then says if that's true, then there's an intentional, yes, we're trying to recreate this in a different way.
Right. Which, again, doesn't necessarily
mean mocking Christianity per se.
We hate Christianity.
Good.
The other thing is that, obviously, a lot of people, the Paris 2024 committee initially defended the performance, saying the segment was intended to celebrate community and tolerance, offered no apology. Clearly, there was never an intention to show disrespect towards any religious group or belief, this is in quotes, said the spokesperson in an email to the Washington Times. That's where I'm reading right now. On the contrary, each of the tableaux in the Paris 2024 opening ceremony were intended to celebrate community and tolerance. Now, this is where it gets interesting. All right, so Christians, us, in the church, are up in arms about it. What I also don't understand is why on the other side of it, there is such a, we need to defend it and excuse it and say, no, it was fine. Because what you had was a lot of other people saying it wasn't supposed to be the Last Supper. It was supposed to be a different painting called the Feast of Dionysus, which
and
is
it looks a lot like that, actually.
1600s.
Yeah.
Now, was that painting painted 200 years or so after Last Supper intended to reference the Last Supper?
Well, I wouldn't know unless I talked with the artist.
Exactly. And this is the thing. You could say, externally, I could look at that and say, no, it's the Feast of Dionysus. But that's me putting in a possible explanation, but was that their intent? Now, here's going on in this quote from Paris 2024. For the festivities segment, Thomas Jolly, which is the person who did all this coordinating, creator behind it, this is a statement from Paris 2024 in an email. Thomas Jolly took inspiration from Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting to create the setting, the spokesperson said. He is not the first artist to make a reference to what is a world-famous work of art, from Andy Warhol to The Simpsons. Many have done it before him. So it seems like they are saying, well, yeah, it was that, but don't be upset. And then there was a whole other wave of statements that was like, no, it's not even that. So don't make it about you because it's this Feast of Dionysus. Right. But all the initial stuff and the direct from the people have said Last Supper was a piece of the inspiration.
Right.
Now, the blue guy, see, this is where I got confused because as soon as I start talking about this blue guy there, that was supposed to be Dionysus. And so that does make sense that they're pulling in these elements of Dionysus and Greek gods and things like that.
Right.
But I think given everything that we see just evidentially laid out, the title in the program, statements from Paris 2024 calling it that, is that it was a reference to that. And because of the backlash, now they're trying to even distance from saying it was a reference to that and trying to put it into other things. But there's also so many people out there who are not because they said it was this Feast of Dionysus painting, but just externally, I'm an art historian and I looked at that and I think it's this.
Right. Jodie, what's her name? Full House. Sweeten? Jodie Sweeten?
From Full House? Yes.
Yeah. And then what's the other Full House girl who's Christian?
Cameron
Candace Burr. Yeah. Candace Cameron Burr. Candace Cameron Burr. So Candace Cameron Burr right away made public statements about how this is a travesty and, you know, an abomination and all that. And then Jodie Sweetin comes out acting like the art history, saying, I know my art history. This has nothing to do with you. Suck it up, like get over it type of thing.
Right.
And it's funny because a lot of us, you know, commoners are looking to these celebrities to form our opinions and thoughts and history and truth rather than forming our own thoughts and opinions and weighing and viewing things through scriptural truth. Anyway, here's what I was talking with my kids about. I can't expect the world who doesn't know Jesus to look and act like Jesus.
Right.
It would be foolish of me to expect that or demand it. Right?
Yeah.
Like it would be foolish of me to do that because they don't know Jesus. Why would they know what it means to look like, walk like, talk like, act like him? And so with this whole here's what's funny about this whole ceremony. That probably wasn't the most offensive part. The whole thing was just bad. Like it was just from my perspective, a really bad ceremony. Obviously that's the most controversial part.
Right.
But all throughout the rest of the opening ceremony, and I didn't get to watch it live, except the last, when they're actually doing, well, no, they showed the drag show quite a bit, but I only got to watch the last supper. No, probably from like, I don't know, because the countries all parade through on their boats in this one, right?
Yeah.
And so I probably watched from like the O's or P's through the end. But like there were dancers all around the whole thing, the whole time, where they kept just going to this random person who's just awkwardly interpretive dancing on a random piece of sidewalk somewhere in France.
That's so funny.
And then there's one scene where like the camera's panning through dancer after dancer after dancer, and you get to like this fourth dancer, and it looks like they just found him on the street and said, "Look, dude, we had someone who showed up who called in sick. We need one more person to stand here. Just dance, do whatever you got to do." Because he looked like he had never danced before in his life. Like it was awkward. You should see if you can find that video, so and funny. It was ridiculous. And then like all the boats, that was a weird thing too, because you have all these thousands and thousands of athletes and hundreds of countries represented, and they're trying to parade them all while it's pouring rain on these boats. In some countries, like you had 6 countries sharing one boat. And so like I'm shoulder to shoulder with my competitor next to me, which cool. That's a sign of unity. But then you have the United States and they get the biggest, best boat. And it's only them on their boat. And then you have this other country who has this teeny tiny, like, rowboat, like smaller than anything you would see out on Horsetooth Reservoir. It's like those poor guys, they got left with, hey, does anyone have a boat we can borrow for this show? All right, guys, go stand on that one. It just felt like a lot of it was either thrown together or not thought through, or just kind of I don't know, maybe the thought process is, hey, let's show that people who have no skill or talent whatsoever can also be a part of something big like this. Like, I don't know what the purpose was in some of those like street dancer performance. Because honestly, I'm not a dancing critic. I cannot dance. I have very bad rhythm. I can do a couple, like I stay in my zone. What's that movie that Will Smith was in? He's a Hitch. That's about the extent of my dancing, right?
Yep.
But I know what looks good versus what looks awful.
Yeah. And
a lot of this show just looked awful to me. And Paris, I'm sorry if that's like your history and your culture as a city, or France as a country. Like I know you have a lot more art and culture than that. Let's represent some of that. I don't know.
All right. Last thing I'll say about it then. I'm going to read something and I'll just see what your thoughts are. Okay. Now, this was on Facebook. This is a friend of mine. I'm not going to say who it is. I know this person very well. He's not a Christian though. Okay. He posted this yesterday. Dear everyone, the Olympics opening ceremony has absolutely nothing, all caps, to do with the Bible, the Last Supper, or Jesus. To the Christians who are so outraged, you just seem desperate to be offended. Is that it? It seems like you want to be outraged by something and just went along with this as a trend. I keep hearing that it was a disgrace. You know what's actually a disgrace? Blaming an entire community of people and calling for their oppression and cancellation because you didn't like a televised event. This was an event, mind you, that was put on by French artists trying to be contemporary and relate to the millennia-old tradition. I'll go on. The Last Supper painting is merely Da Vinci's interpretation of the disciples' reaction to Jesus' foretelling in the Bible. It's not an accurate depiction of an event from the Bible. More simply put, it has only become a symbol of gospel truth because it's so well known. If you look at the opening ceremony in full and look at the painting of the Last Supper and can with 100% honesty look at me and tell me you think it's a mockery, then I offer you to look again with a clearer mind and not a mind intending to be provoked. Look again with a mind that didn't hear from someone else that Christianity was made fun of in front of the entire world, but with a mind that realizes that the ceremony was merely not within your standards of taste. Was it weird? Sure. Was it pretentious? Perhaps. Was it too modern and overdone? Maybe, maybe not. The bottom line is it was not your cup of tea, and guess what? That is okay. You don't have to like everything you watch. In fact, you won't. I can't stand it when Drag Race airs the fake reaction to the winner, but do you see me calling for RuPaul's cancellation? No, you don't. I move on. So just admit that this event wasn't for you, just like the Cirque du Soleil show you saw a few years back and the cashew rosemary lavender cake at your niece's wedding and Beyonce's country album. There'll be things in life which you partake and don't enjoy. It's up to you, however, to decide whether you're truly offended. I'd be willing to wager you're not. You just want to be because you didn't like it a lot. Jesus wasn't blue, on a platter, or surrounded by standing, posing drag queens in the Last Supper painting. Please enlighten me with how the two connect. Thanks for reading.
Sweet.
What do you think?
I like a lot of that. I
Right.
especially agree about Beyonce's country album. Like that was an abomination, not my cup of tea, but that's okay.
This country's terrible.
I'm okay with some country, but sometimes I just want to tell people stay in your lane, bro.
Yeah,
so
fair.
my first reaction right away when you first started talking
Yeah.
was he's calling people out for them being upset and outraged and commenting on something they didn't like.
Right.
By doing that, he's calling out outraged, upset over something he doesn't like.
Right.
He doesn't like my response to something that I didn't like, so he's going to have the same response I had to the something I didn't like about something he doesn't like.
Right.
Did that make sense? Right? Like he doesn't like that I don't like something else.
Right.
So that part was kind of weird to me.
It's kind of
I'm gonna go on this rant
Right.
about how awful you are for going on a rant about how awful something else is.
So we're all just upset about something and wanting to vocalize how we feel.
Right. Now, towards the end, he had some really good thoughts in there that I agree with.
100%.
He also contradicted himself because at the beginning he said it had absolutely nothing to do with the Last Supper.
Right.
Then he goes on defending the Last Supper and talking about how it might have looked like the Last Supper a little bit.
Right.
But it had absolutely nothing to do with the Last
To
Supper,
say it
but
has
let me
absolutely
defend
nothing-
that.
I know.
And so that part was kind of weird. Ultimately, we talked about cancel culture, a podcast a while back, right?
Yeah.
And how we like to do that. I think it's not just Christians, it's humans.
Right.
And we've talked about this a lot. We have such great access to all the information at all times, and we have an audience that will listen to me or argue with me where I don't have to like worry about my actual reputation. I can hide behind a keyboard now, right? I don't have to sit here face to face and have a conversation with you about it. I can just post my rant, think through all my thoughts and just click send and not have to respond to anyone who might disagree with me, not have to respond to anyone who actually brings some logic into the conversation. I can just post my illogical thoughts, my emotional reaction, and I can move on.
Right.
And so we live in a world right now where we all want to be offended
Right.
by everything. And honestly, like, that's stressful.
Yeah.
How much better would it be for us to see that Olympic thing? Come to your own conclusions about it. That's fine. But move on. You know what? I didn't like that. Because of that, I'm not going to watch the rest of it. Great. Do it. Or I didn't like that. But that did not represent the athletes who've worked their butts off for their entire lives to get to this point. I'm going to support the athletes and I'm going to continue to watch and root for them and cheer them on and comment on their posts on social media when they say, yeah, we did it, USA. Right? Like, I love the Olympics for the sport part, for the competition, for countries coming together. It's kind of actually cool to see some people who a week ago were arguing and fighting on their talk show who were sitting next to each other now high-fiving, hugging, cheering on their country.
Right.
Like this brings people together.
Right.
And so I want to spend more time looking for the positive and the good instead of the negative because I just can't take it anymore. Right. Like we focus on the negative so much and it weighs on us. And I'll be talking about this on Sunday about these like burdens, being heavy laden with burdens that we're carrying. that honestly we're not meant to carry. All the information that we have access to at all times, we weren't meant to carry that. All the hurts of the world that I have access to with one click, I keep looking down at my iPad because I have the internet in my hand right now. Right. I can get all of the hurts and burdens and traumas and bad things of the world right here. And that weighs on you. And so I think like it would behoove us, for a fun little word, to just stop sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? Or you're watching the opening ceremony.
Right.
What I could have done right away, I could have turned it off.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I didn't really much care for that. I'm going to go ahead and just not watch the rest of it. I didn't. I kept it going. I mean, it was just me. By the time I turned it on, my kids were in bed.
Yeah.
2 of my kids actually weren't home, my older ones. And so I was just sitting watching it and be like, ew, I don't like that. Or what kind of dance moves are those? Or that was a weird interview. There was an interview with one of the American athletes who basically talked all about himself and using this as a platform to show how he is so good and the best in the world. I'm like, well, sure. I mean, all the Olympians are the best in the reason you've qualified is because you've proven yourself to be the best, but bruh, have a little humility here.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I didn't watch it live, but I saw clips of it after, and my initial reaction was like, huh, it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a little, obviously they're trying to be the Last Supper. Right. Okay. And then I moved on.
Yeah. Culturally, not my thing.
Yeah.
Bearded people in dresses, not my thing.
No.
Hasn't ever been my thing, regardless of potentially my faith.
Right.
I don't want to see you in a dress and you're a bearded person.
Unless it was for a funny skit.
I mean, I think have I seen that before? I hope not.
Have I ever had to, for some sort of
I don't know,
church function, have to wear a dress?
But I'm also like,
I wore an orange suit once with you.
I'm a little more prudish than others.
Okay.
Like there's certain things that other people like or don't have a problem with that I'm just like, ew, I just don't want that. Right. I'm not as big on piercings and tattoos. It's not because I have something against them biblically, right, or because of, my faith in Jesus. They're just not my cup of tea. But guess what? If you have piercings or a tattoo, sweet. Good for you, man. It's not my cup of tea.
I don't have a tattoo.
If you're someone who does not know Jesus and you speak in a way that does not represent him well, guess what my response is? I love you. Let me tell you about my Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? Not, oh, you terrible person. I can't believe you would ever use that word or say that phrase or go steal a candy bar from the grocery store. Like, my first reaction isn't you have to be like Jesus. My first reaction is let me tell you about my Jesus.
Right.
Or at least it should be. It should be. It should be. My first reaction probably is, how dare you not look like Jesus?
Okay.
But it should be. You don't know him yet.
Right. We can't, and we've talked about this a lot. We don't expect the world to conform to who Jesus is when they don't know and don't care about.
We shouldn't expect the world. We do, though. We shouldn't.
Yeah. Thank you. It's kind of like, and I think I've mentioned this before. I don't know if it's been on here or off of here, but we've talked about like so much of like the atheist Christian debate is centered around belief in God. Like if God, atheists will say, I don't believe in God because if he wanted me to believe in his existence, he would know how to make me believe in his existence. And that almost seems to be like the goal is we need to say, we're going to get you to believe in God. But that is never God's goal with us. Belief in him, James says, even the demons believe in him and shudder, right? Just forcing the knowledge of his existence upon people is not what he wants, because you could know God exists and still hate God.
Right.
And so the end goal is not for us to convince an atheist that God exists. And I think as Christians, we can fall into that sometimes. Our end goal is to get them to want a relationship with Jesus.
Right.
Ultimately, that is, we want to, as Rick said somewhat recently, and he said this before, it's like, you're friends with Jesus and you're friends with your friends, introduce your friends.
Right.
Yep. Now we did get an email, which again, email us podcast@dfchurch.com. That's podcast@dfchurch.com about the opening ceremony. Now, he sent us a YouTube link, which I have not watched yet, but he says, I saw enough of the opening ceremony and agree with my bride. What do you expect the world to do but to promote sin? We can't expect the world to behave like Christ as they actively deny him and his power. But as a Christian, we don't need to participate, promote, condone, or give our time to those things that do. Well, we also are told at all times to live at peace with others. So we're not told to fight or harm, though we can discuss that with those who choose to deny God and his power.
Mm-hmm.
So,
2 Timothy, right? Having a form of godliness, but denying its power.
There you go. So we've kind of, and I think all in all, I think this will be our topic for today because we've spent a lot of time here, and I think it's a good one because, again, our hope with this podcast, and if you're listening, if you're watching, if you're sending this to somebody, our hope with this is in our current world and the things that are happening, how do we as Christians respond, interact, engage with, build our faith, get closer to Jesus, but be an effective, impactful influence in the world and culture around us? And I think this is a really good example and a really good opportunity for us to look different than the world. Because while it's often, and in that Facebook thread, a lot of the comments like, yep, Christians are always doing this. Why are Christians always canceling? And I'm like, but it's not Christians are always canceling. It's people are. Right. We see this just as much from a liberal side as we do a conservative side. Right. Christians hate Harry Potter and D&D. And liberal side try to, get businesses shut down if they ever say anything that's pro-life.
They hate hard work. They hate life. I'm just kidding.
No, but it's funny. I can think of a personal example, and I don't want to necessarily get into the details because I don't want to dredge it up, where somebody I know had made a very mildly political almost statement from a business that they were associated with. And there was boycotts and threats to never go there. And still on the local Reddit, people are always saying,
years later,
don't go to this place because of blah, blah, blah. So it's not just the Christians getting upset. And I kind of want to respond to that, my friend, because this guy on Facebook, I know him very, very well. I almost want to be like, yeah, but this isn't a Christian thing. Like, you personally, because he knows about this other situation I'm talking about, have seen how people will boycott and say what they don't like. And so it's like, this is an opportunity for us in the church as Christians living out our faith in a Babylon to stand out and be different by not acting that way, by not calling for the immediate removal of this and going out on a tirade against it. Be offended. If you want to be offended, I guess be offended. If you viewed that as an attack on your faith, it's like, don't watch it, right? You don't, but like, why do we need to go out there and vocally get upset over it?
And then you said, if you want to be offended, be offended.
I guess you
but part of me wants to say, don't,
if you're offended. Right. If I'm immediately see that and I'm like, oh, I didn't like that. But your response to that offense, you can control.
Yes, absolutely. Because we shouldn't be surprised, right? We shouldn't be surprised when the world mocks Jesus or Christianity. We were warned that this was going to happen. And that's good. That's fine.
Yeah.
At least you're thinking about something, right? If you're actively mocking Jesus, that means you're scared about something.
It means at least maybe you're
recognizing
thinking about
something,
it, like you said,
something.
right? Because I think the hardest thing to deal with is apathy. Like, if somebody just doesn't care, you can't ever really have a spiritual conversation. You can't say, hey, what do you think about God? Because I just don't care.
Right. This reminded me of a post this morning, actually, from Greg Steer. We had him on here a little bit ago. But he just kind of that email that came through and then some of our discussion. So he said, as an evangelist, I often remind believers that Jesus was a friend of sinners, and he dined with tax collectors and prostitutes. And I've done this to challenge them to build relationships with the lost and seek to show them the love of Jesus. It's a good reminder. But a powerful truth that I need to include with this reminder is that many, if not most, if not all, of those sinners left those dinner parties with Jesus permanently, spiritually transformed. Jesus was not agreeing with or ignoring their sins. By his mere presence, he was confronting their sins, and he most likely shared with them his thoughts about their sins. A simple reading in Matthew 5 shows clearly that Jesus had no problem confronting the sin of sinners and helping them, us, show the depths of our level of depravity. if we could hear those dinner table conversations between Jesus and the sinners around him, I'm sure it'd be equal parts confronting of sin and extension of grace. That's what happened in Luke 19 when Jesus invited himself to Zacchaeus. And he goes on and on talking about this, but he says, yes, let's dine with the sinners and gladly be accused, like Jesus, of being a friend of sinners. But let's never mistake this for condoning sin. Instead, confront sin in love, point sinners to the same grace by which we sinners have been saved.
I love that.
It's pretty good. Like that's a
great.
good reminder of the whole in the world, not of the world type thing, right? And the email that came through, he said, we don't need to participate, promote, condone that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Right. We don't.
I like that. But we still need to be connected
grace
to people.
We talk with people.
Yep.
We show them the love of Jesus. And Jesus, in his love, calls you out of your sin into a better way of life. And so that's a good reminder and encouragement for us in the midst of this sinful, broken, depraved world that we live in.
Yeah.
Be like Jesus. That's just a good reminder always, right? Be like Jesus, you guys.
Yeah. What would Jesus do?
WWJD.
Well,
should we bring those bracelets back?
Oh, yes.
I never wore them even.
I never even wore them.
Yeah.
No. Do you know what the Mormon version is? They have a little ring, and the initials are CTR. Choose the right, like choose the right thing to do. Or Crash Team Racing, old video game on the PlayStation 1, where you're Crash Bandicoot and you did kart racing.
I thought CTR was also like a little dice game thing. LCR? Left, center, right? Okay,
I don't know
LCR.
what that means.
LCR.
Well, that's our kind of main topic. How do you respond to being offended by the Olympics? With that in mind, I want to move into our AI segment briefly. I'm not going to do pictures this week. I just want to say, here are the top 10 biblical things in the Bible that could have been Olympic events.
Okay.
So, number 10, Peter's water walking race. Walk or run on water across the lake. Don't sink or you're out.
When you say walk or run, that reminds me of the walk run event where they're like the speed walking thing in the Olympics.
That's a thing?
It's happening today, actually. It's the dumbest, today being August 1st, not today when this is released. So it happened for you yesterday. They look so goofy. And like, what's to stop me from just running a little bit faster? What's the limitation?
They've got a limitation built in, I'm sure.
Oh man, it's funny. Sorry, walk run.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Walk, run.
They just don't do it on water. They do it on the street. It's kind of
lame.
like not as cool.
Not as cool.
Yeah.
Number 9, Paul's prison break. Escape from a locked prison cell without breaking a sweat. Earthquakes are allowed.
Okay.
How would that be an event? I don't know. Number 8, Samson's pillar push. Test your strength by pushing apart pillars. Hair growth optional.
I love that one.
Yeah, see, that could be an actual, like a strongman.
Right, strongman competition?
Do they do like weights?
They do weightlifting, yeah.
Okay. Our producer found, I don't know what he's laughing at. At the Olympics, I don't know what they do at the Olympics. Number 7, Elijah's fire calling relay. Call down fire from heaven to ignite a sacrifice. Team events for added excitement.
Okay, that's not fair because he had an advantage.
God?
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't every Christian athlete?
So we can all call fire down during the Olympics on the parts that we didn't like. That one dancer over those 5 in that row. Did you see
that picture? There was like a power outage in Paris, but this one church still had all the power.
I
and was
heard
lit
about
up.
that. Yeah,
it was like that's like a light in the darkness.
Light in the darkness. Cool imagery.
That's what we should be.
Absolutely, light in the darkness.
Number 6, Moses staff throwing. See how far you can throw a staff and turn it into a snake. Extra points if it eats the other snakes.
Okay,
I can see that.
Last snake standing wins.
Yeah. Okay. Number 5, a mana gathering sprint. Collect as much mana as possible before the sun gets too hot and it melts away.
That's good.
Number 4, Jacob's wrestling match. Wrestle with an angel until dawn. Bonus points for divine perseverance. So angel wrestling as an event.
Okay.
So how do you, because if the angels, do they always win? Is it every country wrestles an angel? And if you win, like how do you win?
And what if the angel I'm wrestling is not as powerful and strong as the angel you're wrestling?
Well, so then is it just heaven is a competing country?
Oh, I think
so. Then angels are just in every event.
See, there's an advantage for you. Hashtag spiritual realm.
Number 3,
victory.
David's slingshot accuracy. Hit a target with a sling and stone from a distance of 100 meters, just like David did with Goliath.
Absolutely.
Did he do it from 100 meters?
It was close. We do that same thing now. It's just we use a bow and arrow or a rifle. Those events are Olympic events.
Did you see? It's like a pistol shoot. The one guy.
It's like a quick drop.
All right. So I saw this. They were doing like the pistol shoot, right? And everybody else had like these glasses with like an eye patch or like a little like target thing and like big ear like protection things. And they were all very serious and all these different things that they had to make sure they were shooting right. And this other guy just walked up. He didn't have earplugs on. He didn't wear glasses. He was just like both eyes open and he got silver.
That a kid.
It was awesome. Number 2, Jonah's fish dodging. Compete to see who can avoid getting swallowed by a giant fish the longest.
Everyone
so
just
like a big
jumps.
tank of whales and fish creatures.
Yeah, we go to SeaWorld for this event, get all the orcas in one big pond, and then all the Olympians jump in there. I love it.
Noah's Ark building marathon. Number 1, test your carpentry skills by building a giant ark in 40 days and 40 nights. Wait, he didn't build it in 40 days and 40 nights. Isn't that just how long it rained?
Yeah, but I mean, you had to bring that element in. And honestly, if we just let people build for years, you're gonna lose my attention.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, that was your top 10 list of biblical events that could have been in the Olympics. Email us, podcast@dfchurch.com. Let us know what you want us to ask the AI. Now, yes,
Olympics.
Math.
You know what I want to see in the Olympics?
Math.
Ultimate Frisbee. I want to see Ultimate Frisbee in the Olympics.
I saw something that said it was like we should just have one normal person everywhere just to kind of give us like the baseline.
Yeah. That'd be so much fun. I would be that normal person. I would totally swim the freestyle 100 and be just minutes behind the people who do it in 15 seconds.
What is so you say Ultimate Frisbee. What's the most recent event that has been added?
This year, breakdancing.
Wait, breakdancing is in the Olympics now?
Breakdancing is an Olympic sport this year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
How do you... It's such a weird thing because it feels like it's very subjective.
Right. Well, I mean,
like if there's a race, 100-meter dash, it's very clearly whoever crosses first wins, right? But if I'm doing like gymnastics or ice dancing,
you have judges who are really smart and know all the details. Same with like snowboarding in the Winter Olympics, skateboarding in the Summer Olympics.
Yeah, see,
you have like levels of difficulty with different tricks that the expert judges know and see, and specific rules. Breakdancing hasn't started yet, but if you ask me right now, what one event needs to be removed from the Summer Olympics?
Yeah,
it's horse prancing.
No way. That was the best.
That is the only Olympic event currently with an animal in it. The rest are all dependent
like
upon
horse racing.
No, that's not an Olympic sport. You have fancy equestrian stuff, but horse is the only animal in the Olympics, which again, it's the animal that's good at what they're doing, not the human. The human, sure, you're training the animal. You're telling the animal what to do, maybe.
Yeah,
but
you trained it, so it's like a dog show.
But yeah, like
but the dog isn't who wins. I mean, I guess the dog wins the ribbon.
Sport for me. Win. For me, it's not my cup of tea. Well, I'm not going to be out there protesting. I'm not going to write a big old article.
Cancel the Olympics.
I'm just going to laugh when I see it show up on the Olympic feed and just be like, that's the goofiest
as long
thing.
as they keep Snoop Dogg commenting it, I don't mind.
That does make it more tolerable. Thank you, Snoop Dogg.
Thank you for
bringing
all your
a little bit of sanity to the Olympics.
Don't you think it's weird that Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart are good friends?
Yeah. Also, just going back to Snoop Dogg, why did he carry the Olympic torch? I heard Lecrae also carried the Olympic torch. Why are non-athletes such a big part of this?
Because that's what gets the suckers in.
I don't care about the celebrityism of it.
Yeah,
I want to watch the athletes perform.
Why did Kamala Harris have Megan Thee Stallion open up a concert at her most
because
recent
of
rally?
what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Just fell out of the coconut tree. Well, thank you for joining us and giving us some of your time. Again, remember, email podcast@dfchurch.com with all your questions, comments, and concerns. And we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.